So, new video today, all about how I get my permissions without ever leaving the house. Many people, myself included, find it difficult to get permissions via the traditional method of going to talk to farmers, because either they don't know any, or they're not in the countryside, or they're just a little bit shy. What would be great is if you could just email them or talk to them online and ask them that way. Then you wouldn't have to front them on their doorsteps, potentially annoying when they're working, and if they ignore you, then, well, no real harm done. But because most farms and landowners are business-to-business commercial enterprises, they have no real need to publish their details online, email or otherwise, so they just don't. But luckily, there are some that are business-to-consumer enterprises or have business-to-consumer arms to their enterprises, and it's these you need to find, and it's these that we'll look at in this video. To put some context around it, I currently have 10 permissions, and every permission that I have came from something that we touch on in this video. So hopefully you'll all get some useful tips and tricks and be able to use them in your local area to pick up some new permissions for yourself. And this video will focus around using online search tools to find the farms and their contact details that you need for your area. And first up is farm shops. Might seem obvious, but they have business to consumer commercial enterprises, meaning that most have websites, most have Facebook pages, all have some form of online presence that positions where they are, what they stock, and importantly, how you get in touch with them. So if they have an email address, use that. If they have a web form on their website, use that to contact them. And if they're on Facebook, message them via that as well. That will give you access to the farm shops in your local area, most of which are connected directly to a farm. Often they're actually based on a farm. So these are a rich vein of opportunity to get you some new permissions. And my very first permission came from just such an approach. And when searching your local area, go wide first and then narrow it down to nearer your own location. And obviously how wide you go depends on how far you're willing to travel. Seems obvious, but Google is your friend in these scenarios, because whatever you search for, Google will do its best to find a match for your term and your area. So next one to try is just straight farm, and see if there are any in your area that for whatever reason have their details online, be it a website, email address, etc. And again, use that to contact those farmers. Now it will return a lot of the same farm shops that you've just seen, but it will also show some individual and unique ones, so you will have both farm shops and farms for your local area. And Google prioritizes or tends to prioritize and show those with websites first, so you should see them come up in the search terms as well. But it doesn't just end with farm and farm shops. There's a bunch of landowners out there with rural businesses that you can check out. So on screen is a list which includes pick your own farms, camping caravan sites, fisheries and fishing lakes. My second permission came from an inquiry to a fishing lake where the farmer just happened to also have a 220 acre arable farm connected to the fisheries. So the more you experiment and the more you think about what rural businesses are out there, the more likely you are to find additional contact details online for businesses who could give you permission on their land to do some more detecting. I've listed a bunch of terms that I've used, but be creative, think of others, see what's local to you. Just get out there and try anything that you think will give you an online response for a landowner that you can get hold of. And as mentioned earlier, it's not just Google and websites. Try Facebook and use the search terms already mentioned for your area to see whether or not there are some businesses that just have a Facebook presence. Look for farming groups in your local area. They're often there trading tractors, rental, hay bales, etc. See whether or not you're allowed to post in there. Also look for historical groups in your area and community groups for your area. They're often well populated with community-minded and community-spirited people who are approachable, and if they don't have their own land, can potentially point you in the direction of someone who can. Another place to look is Twitter. There's a bunch of, again, people who've got Twitter accounts, be it farmers, landowners, young farmers often have Twitter accounts. So worthwhile checking on Twitter, if you're a Twitter user, to see whether or not there are additional connections there that you can use. And then not strictly online, but this video is about how to get permissions without leaving your house. So, have you asked your friends, family and colleagues? Often there's land connected to homes. Friends and colleagues may have hobbies that involve the rural landscape, be it beekeeping, gardening, horses and equestrian pursuits. Or are they members of clubs that have land, shooting clubs for example, golf clubs for example? Or do they have friends and family they could introduce you to that have that land or those connections? You lose nothing by asking, and these are all people you already know, so why not get the word out there that you're a detectorist looking for places that you can go and practice your hobby and potentially make everyone rich in the process. So you've identified a bunch of landowners and farmers that you want to get in touch with. So the next thing to think about is what to say when you do. So looking at it from an email content point of view, here are my tips. So my tips for the email to send or the inquiry in a web form is be polite in your requests. Obvious, but make sure that you are polite and respectful of them and their time. Spell check it thoroughly. If you want to come across as serious about your hobby, then don't have typos and grammar errors all over it. There's plenty of online tools that can help you with those sorts of things. Mention that you're NCMD insured through your membership. It'll help position you as being professional and serious about your hobby. Also mention anything that you can offer in return. So if you've got a trade, like you're an electrician or a plumber, mention that maybe you could help them if they have any issues that way around. If you're a web designer, offer to have a look at their website or build them one. Or if you do something more esoteric, like maybe you'll paint landscapes, maybe you could paint one of their farm and give them it as a present. Lastly, make it personal. If you have some connection to the area, maybe you grew up there or you've got family there, you spent your childhood running around in those fields, then mention that. It gives you a connection to the land and connection to the people who currently own it, and that always goes down well. We've talked about online resources, email, web forms, etc. on this video, but everything applies to letters here as well. If you want to apply this to contacting people who don't have online presences, then you can do all the same, especially in terms of the email content. One very last thing, make sure you keep a record of who you contacted and what their response was. It just makes it easier further down the line to make sure that you don't repeat contact people, because that could get annoying very quickly if people are getting bombarded every week by someone asking for permission. As I was pulling together the content for this video, I took the opportunity to send out a few additional requests myself. I've had 2 responses in the last 48 hours, one from a 500-acre farm and one from a 15-acre site that has a lot of history in the area, including a medieval village about a quarter of a mile away. So the tips and tricks certainly work. I've added an extra 2 permissions whilst making this video, so I hope you find it useful. Please let me know if you do in the comments. Please let me know if you get any successes off the back of this, and I hope you found this useful. Thanks a lot.